thank you so much for joining us today. I'm with Dan Marin. He's an expert realtor out of the Southern California area. He services both Los Angeles and Orange County. And so thank you, Dan, for making yourself available to speak with us today for this Meet the Agent series. We're very excited to have you. So I know that you service Southern California, like I said, and you are currently with Realty One Group Masters brokerage.
Initially, I'd been with two other brokers that were high fees, and maybe the technology was a little bit on the older side. And so, I met with Realty One, and I found that, one, the structure, the commission structure was really, really good. And two is they have a lot of great tools that, some other companies just don't have. And so if you're good at being a self-starter and self-management, it's a good fit. It's a good brokerage. And I've known my broker's family for over 30 years. So, that kind of helped too.
Yeah, I bet that always helps. And I know from talking with you that your core specialty or your favorite niche of home buyers would be either first-time home buyers or those who are purchasing in the luxury home market. What about those? Because in a lot of ways, those are two very different groups of buyers. So what about both of those groups calls out to you?
Well, with the first-time home buyers, it's the excitement. You're working with somebody, and this is going to be their first home. And I remember back purchasing my first home and what I went through. And it's like, boy, if I could help them and give, just little tidbits of advice or, things that I went through, that I'd really like to help them. I mean, I was very fortunate with my first home purchase, but the agent and the inspector left a little bit to be desired. There were some issues that we went through, but everything got resolved. But if I can save somebody that hassle, I want to do it on the first time home buyer. With luxury market who wouldn't love that market, right? I mean, and luxury is a big word. I mean, there's so many different things, from beach communities, what's luxury, to what's inland, that's luxury. So it's just all the different facets. I like luxury beach market, so it's being down by the beach areas and finding out what's popular down there versus other areas.
So a luxury home buyer can be purchasing anywhere from you can find a little bit of luxury, I guess, anywhere almost, right?
Yeah, I mean, depending on the area, luxury can start at $700,000 and go up to, I think like the biggest listing I ever had was $6 million, and this home was, I can't remember, but I mean, it was like over 10,000 square feet. It was crazy. I mean, marble floors, and it was just. I mean, you can go end to end. I mean, $1 million in the beach will be like about 1,400 square feet or less. And, other areas, you could be looking at 10,000 square feet plus. So it all depends, equestrian versus beach, canyons and desert areas, city, suburban. So it's wide ranging.
Gotcha, okay.
People, yeah, it's an interesting challenge.
And I know that we had talked before about that you had some experience with Zillow leads, and that you've been watching over the course of the last few years in your real estate market that people are increasingly moving away from Zillow or finding the Zillow services to be somewhat lacking. Can you tell us a little bit about your personal experience with Zillow and how you've been watching that unfold in the last couple of years?
They tried. It's just the quality of leads, are not comparable to what you provide. And, I think I mentioned before that there was another lead service that my broker had, and it was very, very expensive. But we closed deals, and we had some good leads. And right now, with what I'm working and what we're looking to keep going, this looks like it's going to be as good, if not better, than that. And so I'm pleased with it. But like with anything else, you got to work it. You have to take the time with it. And with Zillow, Sometimes you'll get agents that call you and want information on a property that's not even your listing, but they see your name, and it's just funny. And then but the buyers tend to be a little bit more flighty. They just want information. They're not serious. Whereas the buyers, I've had a much better quality buyer from SetSchedule than Zillow.
Well, and so since you have had so much experience working with different lead generation services, what would you say is the most important thing to keep in mind when you're approaching? So specifically talking to agents that are unfamiliar with internet lead generation, what do you need to keep in mind? What do you need to do to be successful?
Is sometimes you're going to go through 20, 50 leads and they're not going to be great. And then all of a sudden you're going to hit 5 to 10 of them that are fantastic. And it's like, oh, you're happy. So you just have to be patient. You have to work through them. And like I said, even if they say no, is give them a follow-up and make sure that they're really not looking to buy or sell. But it's kind of a numbers game. But it's what's nice is the quality is better. The quality is there. And you learn which lead sources tend to work out a little bit better than others, and but just stick with them and work with them, and don't expect immediate results. If you get immediate results, that's just icing on the cake.
Working with or considering working with internet lead generation, how important is it to have a CRM in place before you start?
It's really important. I'll be honest. I'm still guilty of not utilizing a CRM perfectly. I am using it, and I use it in conjunction with the follow-up process with SetSchedule. So between the two, it's getting better, and I'm refining the CRM. But having a good CRM is definitely very, 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 very important.
And when you were deciding whether or not to partner with SetSchedule, what was eventually the deciding factor? What made you opt to partner with us?
Well, what I liked is that I was able to purchase leads individually and try them and kind of just get a feel for the quality of the lead. And I think it was like by the 10th lead or the 15th lead, I was like, I felt the service was good. And so I signed on. And, one of those very first leads is we're looking to get something big done. We just met yesterday. So, hopefully this week, next week, we'll have something going.
Well, and one of the things that really intrigued me talking with you is that you said that you relied heavily on door knocking and open houses to develop your book of business. Now, a lot of the realtors that I speak to these days sort of feel that open houses are a thing of the past, that they really do open houses as a way to appease homeowners. Can you talk about address that, or what would be your response to an agent who says that?
I would say is maybe it's just the way they run their open houses. Maybe it's perhaps the area. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I can tell you that for myself, I love open houses. I pick up clients. I've had lots of listings from open houses. I've had one family that came into an open house. I sold their home. They bought. They referred me to a brother. He bought. They referred me to another brother. He sold and bought. They referred me to their father. He sold and bought. And that was from one open house. And, I had another listing and same thing. They sold and they bought. I mean, open houses work, plus you do get leads too.
And would you say the same thing about door knocking? Because I talk to a lot of agents as well who kind of don't do door knocking anymore, don't see results from it.
Door knocking, I like doing it. I don't do as much of it anymore now that I have SetSchedule. But what I do is with the SetSchedule leads, especially the seller leads, I will go door knock them. I will go door knock that lead, and either evenings or weekends are always best to get a hold of these people. And so it's more of a high value door knock instead of just, here's a farm, I'm door knocking it. Instead, all right, here's 10 sellers I'm going to go hit today. And you go door knock them.
Well, that's a great idea. I like that term, that high value door knocking makes sense. We were discussing the kind of the business model that you've implemented since you started partnering with SetSchedule. And I know that you mentioned that you're through SetSchedule, you've sort of become more of a listing agent and sort of are supplementing your book of business with buyer leads as well. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because it's surprising to me, since we do typically generate more buyer information than sellers, but you've been able to connect with a lot of sellers?
That is true. There's a lot more buyers, but with sellers is with let's say with buyer leads, let's just pick a random number. Let's say 10% of the buyer leads are going to be serious about buying. Whereas with the seller leads, from what I'm seeing, is we're looking at about 50%, maybe more. And again, it's a longer process versus a buyer that's ready here and now. But I think the value of the quality of the seller leads is a little bit higher. And it's easier to focus on them and target them all the time. And sometimes buyers don't give you all their information. They don't want mailers. Sometimes it's tough to meet with them. But it's just I like listing. I like listing properties. Most people do. I enjoy my buyers too. But getting a house ready to sell is a lot of fun.
How do you build rapport? So if you're saying that most of the people that or a lot of the sellers that you've contacted through SetSchedule were maybe not initially super receptive to that idea of wanting to sell their house. So how do you start that process? I know it's going to take time and follow up.
Yeah, it's one, get them on the phone. And then when you finally get them on the phone, it's two, talk to them and say, hey, we heard that you're thinking about selling the property on blah, blah, blah street. And, I'd like to see how I can help you. Can I get you some information? And if it's no, like they get taken by surprise, is, just back off a little bit and say, hey, you know what? Okay. Do you mind if I stay in touch with you? And, typically they'll say, sure, go ahead. Because, these leads are sales listing leads for a reason. It's either they expired, or they contacted or were contacted by someone and they were thinking about doing something at one time. So is you just got to follow up with them and stay on them. And then, like I said, sometimes, like with at least 3 or 4 seller leads, is they were no, and now it's like, well, you know what? Call us in January, call us in February. We're looking at that time frame. And so I go door knock, or even if I can't get a hold of them, I'll go and door knock the lead. I'll leave material behind. I've got a lot of marketing materials that have been printed, and so I leave something fresh every time I go by. I'll follow up with a phone call. I'll use text messaging, but I won't call them a lot because I don't want to annoy them. But it's some kind of touch once to twice a month, whether it's a call, a text, a mailer, a door knock, leave behind. It's something, So that's important.
And what do you do with the prospects that you're haven't spoken to yet? So that you've been reaching out and you haven't been in communication. Do you still follow up with those people? And if so, can you give us a feel of your cadence?
What I do is depending on the lead, it's going to vary. Sometimes you get a sales lead, a buyer lead, and they're hot and ready to go, and all of a sudden something scares them and they disappear. So I'll wait 2-3 weeks. I'll make a call, and usually I'll reconnect. And it's just a process. I mean, I was doing it today. It's a process of trying to connect and getting that face to face, and treading lightly. Is don't be too pushy. You want to be their friend. You're there to help them, versus you're there trying to sell them something. And it's like we're here to help these people. So if you go with that attitude.
I see. So you approach it more like a courtship than necessarily the hard sale.
I mean, that's really what it is. I mean, you want someone to dance with, and maybe they're a little afraid. So you got to be nice and just bide your time.
That's understandable. I mean, I think a lot of people have had bad experiences too with real estate, and when you're considering, the biggest investment that they've had or that they're likely to make in their lifetime, a lot of those fears and bad experiences can come to light. And then how would you overcome that if you were working with somebody who, say, had a horrible experience with the last realtor? So let's say it's an expired listing where they just hated the realtor who was listing the property before. How do you approach that?
That's where you do that research ahead of time. Is if you look and you see this home was listed at $700,000 whereas maybe it should have been listed at 500,000. Okay, this guy wants a lot for the house. And so you got to talk to them and find out, okay, did they do a lot of updates? Are there a lot of renovations? Or is it that they've just got this house and, I mean, they think that it just has this intrinsic value to it that is not quite justified. And so you have to gauge the seller. Is he realistic, or is he someone you got to back off for a while and let him come back to reality a little bit? So, or if it's someone that had an agent and expired, it's like, did they do open houses? Did they market properly? It's like I like to tell my sellers is I'll go hit other real estate. Oh my gosh, what's that called again? When you go hit other areas, other territories. Yeah. And so you'll go to their realtor meetings, their caravans, and hand out flyers. And, depending on the market, it's like if because a lot of local guys, so even if you're not from the area exactly, that could be a plus, because you can tell them, you know what, a lot of the agents here just think that the buyers are going to come, like historically, 5 to 10 miles within this property. And I just had a meeting this past week, and I had to tell the seller, it's like, look, the buyer's not going to come from town. The buyer's going to come from out of town, most likely these areas, or it's going to be way out of state. I mean, this is just too unique a property for someone local to want to buy. That's just the reality of it, unless they specifically love this one area, which could happen. But most of the areas most of the buyers from that area are from out of state. So, you just got to do your research.
All right. And then what would you say, because this is, obviously you're here. One of the reasons that we're interviewing you today is that you are a premium member with SetSchedule. And so we're trying to get a feel for all facets of partnering with SetSchedule, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So can you talk about some of the challenges that you've experienced using the SetSchedule application and how you overcame those?
Using the follow-up feature, where you put your notes, which I think is fantastic, and then you have your follow-up date, is sometimes on my laptop, it doesn't give me a notification to follow up. Whereas if I put it in my phone, it automatically goes to my calendar. So, and then it automatically reminds me that way. But so now what I'm doing is when I'm working the laptop, I will go and put it in my CRM as well. So that way I get a notification from the CRM to either call or text or whatever it is that it's set to do. So that would be it. But I mean, I love being able to go back, because once you start accumulating leads, it's like, what did we specifically talk about? And you go back to your notes and it's like, oh, okay, this is where they were at. And oh, now I remember. And so you can call back and have a fresh conversation, and both of you reconnect. Oh, wow, he remembered what we were talking about. So that kind of helps too. That's nice. And then the cold, the warm, and the hot feature, because that works perfectly with my CRM because it has the same thing.
And so and this is also going to be viewed by agents who are contemplating getting into internet lead generation and specifically partnering with SetSchedule. So if you could give one piece of advice to agents just starting out in internet lead generation or just starting partnering with SetSchedule, what advice would you give them?
Is screen the leads. I mean, that's what I did before I signed on. Is if you see a lead that's a $60,000 lead in a $200,000 area, it's probably not the greatest lead. But if you see a lead that's looking and budget is about what that area is, then just grab it. I mean, the odds are a lot better, that way. Is that what you mean by the advice, or?
Well, yeah, and just sort of looking to mentor new agents, so agents who might not have had experience yet, that their idea of leads are referrals rather than lead generation. What's something you would keep in mind when working?
Be patient, be persistent. Like I said, I've got a great pipeline right now. I'm looking at a couple of deals at least that are going to be over $1 million, which is nice. And don't be afraid. This is the other thing too, is when you door knock a lead, like happened to me, is I door knocked the lead. The lead came in and said they were looking to sell a home. I went to the home. The contact was gone, but the husband was there. And I went by and I said, hi, I got this note that Mary was looking to sell the home. And the guy looked at me, he goes, we're not selling, and I was like, oh, you drive. And then like, oh, okay, well, I just got a notice that she was looking to sell. And he's like, oh, her and her sisters have a 5-unit apartment building up the road that they're looking to sell. So, you gotta dig a little bit, So just try to get information nicely, gently, and just be nice to people. And you'd be surprised how much information you end up getting. So instead of looking at a $500,000 sell, now I'm looking at a 1.8 million 5-unit apartment building that on the 17th, I'm hoping to get good news that we can list.
Well, thank you so much, Dan. I really appreciate you making yourself available, speaking with us today, and sharing your knowledge and expertise on the market and internet lead generation. I think this is going to be a really great resource for a lot of agents out there. So thank you again.
You're very welcome.